Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. We provide you with the exciting news King Charles and William finally ban. Meghan's title after hidden financial scandal is exposed. It started not with a thunderous sound, but with a subtle indication in the records. In a serene wood-paneled office nestled amid the intricate passages of Buckingham Palace, a locale where tradition spans centuries and change is approached with profound skepticism, the first tremor of an earthquake was detected. It was here, among the aroma of aged paper and floor polish, that a dynasty's most severe contemporary issue was revealed. The revelation would compel an unwilling king to confront an untenable decision, set sibling against sibling in a conclusive tragic division, and jeopardize the very foundation of the monarchy. A regular financial audit in the harsh winter of 2025 would evolve into a worldwide display of treachery, deceit, and the catastrophic exertion of royal authority. This narrative recounts how a concealed bank account, a series of covert transactions, and a meticulously crafted network of deception culminated in the public humiliation of a royal duchess, an act of institutional preservation so ruthless and definitive that it would reshape the Windsor family for decades. A murmur in the accounts. The Royal Finance Office is a distinct organization characterized by rigorous and even ascetic commitment to financial integrity. The top accountants are not just number analysts. They are the vigilant protectors of the Crown's image, well aware that a single erroneous pound may provoke a media uproar and bolster Republican support. Margaret Hartley exemplified this culture. After over 2 decades of service, she had an exceptional comprehension of the dynamics of royal finances. She was aware of the distinctive spending behaviors of each home, the anticipated expenses of a royal trip compared to a state dinner, and the nuanced indicators of authentic expenditure. She was a lady who discovered veracity in the rigid, uncompromising rationale of a balance sheet. In early December 2025, during a retrospective examination of the Sussex household records from the time before their abrupt departure from royal responsibilities, Hartley had a familiar, uncomfortable sensation of apprehension. It was subtle, imperceptible to a less discerning observer. Merely minor, persistent disparities, payments to merchants that were rather excessive, expenditures recorded for engagements that did not fully correspond with the official court circular. They resembled subtle blemishes on an immaculate document, insignificant flaws that suggested a more profound taint. Another accountant may have seen these as mere clerical errors, the unavoidable friction inherent in a complicated business. Margaret Hartley's work was founded on the notion that little contradictions often serve as the strands that, when tugged, dismantle a more extensive fabric of deceit. For 3 days she labored in concentrated stillness, her existence narrowing to the numerical data on her display. She verified payment dates against the publicly available itineraries of Prince Harry and Meghan. She extracted invoices and conducted a line-by-line comparison with the events they claimed to represent. As she dug farther, a troubling pattern started to emerge. The inconsistencies were systematic. They exhibited a meticulous approach. Financial transactions were occurring in manners that contradicted the established centuries-old traditions of the home. With profound sorrow, she saw that this was no longer a mere issue of basic bookkeeping. She presented her findings to Thomas Blackwell, a man who had overseen the royal treasury throughout the reigns of 3 kings and held extensive knowledge of financial catastrophes, both prevented and experienced. As Hartley delineated the contradictions, Blackwell's renowned stern demeanor intensified. The subdued tension in the room altered. This was not an issue to be resolved. It was a crisis to be elevated. Shortly thereafter, the issue was presented to Sir Clive Alderton, the king's private secretary, and the definitive gatekeeper to the monarch. Alderton, a veteran diplomat, saw more acutely than anybody the intricate relationship between the monarchy's private matters and its public endurance. Any suggestion of financial misconduct, particularly with the contentious Sussexes, was a volatile spark poised above a barrel of political explosives. This would incite a media frenzy and invite official, perhaps adversarial examination by Parliament's Public Accounts Committee. He issued his commands with subdued pressing authority. A comprehensive forensic inquiry was to commence without delay. However, it needed to be quiet. A covert operation, A compact sealed team was formed. Hartley and Blackwell from finance, two of the palace's most senior legal consultants, and Sarah Chen, a discreet outsider investigator, renowned for her expertise in financial forensics. Their directive was unequivocal: uncover the facts and disclose them to no one. The inquiry had commenced. The phantom within the mechanism. The squad labored over the Christmas holidays, a time when the rest of the nation was immersed in celebratory joy. Their environment consisted of encrypted data-protected servers in discreet discussions in soundproof chambers. They meticulously examined a vast array of digital and physical records, bank statements, international wire transfers, vendor contracts, and expense reports in pursuit of the origin of the discrepancies. Amidst the intricate documentation, they discovered a sequence of significant disbursements originating from the Sussex family accounts to a consultancy business unfamiliar to anybody inside the palace. The company's invoices were ambiguous, referencing strategic communications and public relations consultant, yet the amounts were far above typical industry prices for such services. Sarah Chen, the principal investigator, promptly directed her efforts towards this elusive phenomenon. The warning signs manifested very immediately. Corporate data indicated that the company was registered in Delaware, a state known for its corporate confidentiality regulations that permit owners to maintain anonymity. The firm had an ethereal internet presence, lacking a website, professional profiles, or any digital imprint. It was a mere facade intended only for the reception of funds and nothing more. Upon acquiring the firm's financial record, Chen's team, using their substantial resources, revealed the operation's actual nature with startling clarity. The funds from the Sussex household did not remain with the Delaware Corporation. It was a conduit. The monies were promptly and automatically moved to a concealed account situated offshore in the Channel Islands. The probe now had its focal point. The team dedicated the remainder of December to delineating the complex trajectories of these payments, constructing a timetable that was both incriminating and irrefutable. What they discovered was a complex and very concerning system. The offshore account was established in early 2019, just after Meghan and Harry's wedding, when the Duchess remained a senior working royal. Capital started influx practically immediately, amassing to hundreds of thousands of pounds inside the subsequent year. The most unsettling aspect, the feature that elevated this from a mere lapse in judgment to a significant betrayal, was the time. The most substantial contributions to the clandestine account typically occurred shortly after significant royal events. A substantial payout would be received days after a special family assembly at Sandringham. Another would emerge immediately after a state event attended by Meghan. A pattern arose when deposits coincided with private meetings, family vacations, and official events, occasions that subsequently became the focus of intricate and speculative media coverage. The association was too accurate and consistently evident to be just chance. An individual having privileged access to the royal family's most confidential moments was methodically profiting from that access. In early January 2026, Sarah Chen submitted her final report to Sir Clive Alderton. The evidence was presented with unambiguous clarity: the concealed offshore account, the shell company, the payment pattern, and the dubious timing. Although she could not conclusively demonstrate that a particular statute had been violated without a comprehensive criminal inquiry, the arrangement was a profound violation of all royal protocols. It transgressed the hallowed unwritten principle that royal family members refrain from deriving benefit from their status. Sir Clive posed the pressing question: who governed the account? The path, however intentionally concealed, directed to a certain individual. The consultancy company was overseen by a person with established past commercial connections with Meghan Markle. The account was created soon following her integration into the household. The outcome was inevitable. Sir Clive understood his necessary course of action. This was no longer an issue for the personnel to address. The king needed to be apprised. Upon the king's awareness, the Prince of Wales, the prospective heir to the throne, would also need to be informed. What they discovered was more than only a financial scandal. It was indicative of a deliberate, prolonged treachery originating from inside the core of the family. A prince's acerbic redemption. Prince William was informed on a frigid, overcast January morning at Kensington Palace. Sir Clive Alderton's appearance was unexpected, and his demeanor was somber. He had a solitary leather suitcase, and William immediately discerned that this was not a customary briefing. While the king's confidential secretary systematically arranged the paperwork on the polished mahogany table, the business structures, bank records, and timelines, William listened with a demeanor of restrained, icy rage. His jaw clenched with every disclosure. For years, he had nurtured profound misgivings about his sister-in-law's intentions, an instinctual belief that her acts were motivated by a dispassionate calculation of self-interest, which starkly contrasted with the family's culture of service. However, the reality articulated in these documents exceeded even his most pessimistic expectations. From the outset, William had never really trusted Meghan. Her demeanor had a polished, performing aspect that was disconcertingly professional. He saw her instinctual ability to locate the camera lens amongst a throng, her delicate placement in group shots to guarantee her centrality, and her adept comprehension of media manipulation that seemed more befitting of a Hollywood strategist than a royal princess. His apprehensions were not founded in elitism, as his brother had vehemently asserted, but in a profound innate trepidation for the institution he was destined to head and the sibling he had vowed to save. He attempted to caution Harry. In the months before the wedding, he subtly proposed that they decelerate, allowing Meghan more time to fully comprehend the peculiar opulent confinement she was about to enter. The advice sprang from the practicality of a future monarch and the affection of an elder brother. Harry, deluded by his conviction that love could triumph over everything, responded with vehement fury, alleging that William was attempting to undermine his happiness. The talk inflicted a wound from which their relationship never fully healed. Harry prioritized his new romantic interest above the collective wisdom of his family, and William, honoring his brother's decision, withdrew, hoping he was mistaken. Seated in his office, confronted with the plain black and white evidence of financial misconduct before him, William had a nauseating surge of vindication. It was a triumph he had never desired. The evidence indicated that Meghan was exploiting her royal title almost immediately upon her acquisition. While openly advocating for devotion and duty, she was clandestinely building a covert financial empire. During her attendance at official gatherings as a crown representative, she accepted fees from media corporations. She had transformed access to her new family, his family, into a negotiable asset. He interrogated Sir Clive over the singular subject that plagued him. Was Harry implicated? Was he aware Alderton said that the inquiry uncovered no proof of Harry's direct involvement? His name was absent from any corporation paperwork. No capital was deposited into the accounts under his control. The evidence clearly indicated that he was an unwitting piece in a game of which he was unaware, serving as a protective shield used by his wife to obscure her actions. This understanding made the treachery much more significant. Harry had irreparably severed ties, forfeited his connection with his father and brother, and renounced his homeland, all to protect a lady who seemed to be betraying the very institution to which he was supposed to be loyal. William's first impulse was a fundamental need for conflict. He intended to go to California to place the papers on a table before Meghan and insist that she provide an explanation. However, Sir Clive advised patience. This has now become a state issue. The king must be notified first. This choice would influence the monarchy's future and could not be motivated by William's personal resentment. He acquiesced despite the fury seething inside him. He recalled all the family meals, christenings, and holidays during which Meghan had sat opposite him, fulfilling the role of the loyal wife and duchess. It was entirely a performance, a falsehood. Subsequently, his thoughts shifted to Harry. His brother, having already endured significant loss, was on the verge of having his life irrevocably wrecked by a fact so catastrophic it may obliterate him entirely. At that point, William resolved to act. Prior to any formal action being undertaken, he would consult with his father, not as the Prince of Wales to his sovereign, but like a son to his progenitor. Regardless of the subsequent actions or institutional responses needed, this was fundamentally a familial tragedy. The King's solitary watch. The emergency meeting was held in the most guarded area of Buckingham Palace, a chamber intended for national crises. The most trusted counselors of King Charles convened around an elongated table, their expressions marked by the seriousness of the circumstances. Sir Clive Alderton delivered the results, his calm diplomatic demeanor contrasting with the harrowing substance of his report. Upon completion, a profound quiet enveloped the room. This was not an issue of public relations to be addressed. This constituted an existential danger. The legal counsel started by delineating the substantial intricacies of the king's considerations. Revoking a royal title was not a simple administrative procedure. It constituted a constitutional quagmire, a power never used in contemporary history. Such actions would provoke legal disputes from Meghan, transforming a private palace issue into a prolonged and contentious public litigation, which she would contest on the emotionally charged basis of persecution and racism. The PR team presented a similarly grim scenario. Any action taken against Meghan would be characterized by her and her influential allies as the ultimate spiteful gesture of a racist and antiquated institution. She would be seen as a martyr, particularly in America, while the monarchy would be portrayed as the antagonist. However, the danger of inactivity was far more pronounced. Should an investigative journalist uncover the narrative of the concealed report, the palace would face allegations of a cover-up and complicity in the corruption it professes to detest. The monarchy's reputation, already tenuous, may collapse entirely. Prince William, summoned by his father, vehemently opposed any efforts at a discreet discussion. He claimed that appeasement would constitute a catastrophic error. Meghan had previously shown that she adhered to a distinct set of principles without allegiance or institutional reverence. Negotiating would provide her power and encourage extortion. During the argument, King Charles maintained a mostly quiet demeanor, his expression remote. He grappled not just with tactics, but also with the overwhelming burden of his combined responsibilities. He was a parent contemplating an action that would irrevocably terminate his connection with his younger kid. Harry would see this not as a needed act of administrative discipline, but as a personal affront to the lady he loved. He would choose her, making the divide between them insurmountable. However, he was also the monarch. He had awaited this duty for 70 years, braving decades of public scrutiny and personal controversy to ultimately assume the throne. He committed himself to demonstrating his value, advocating for causes, and preparing for the grave responsibility of donning the crown. He saw, probably more acutely than anybody else there, that the monarchy's influence did not stem from affluence or constitutional legitimacy, but from a tenuous, implicit agreement with the populace, a conviction that the royals embody something beyond simple notoriety. They embody obligation, assistance, honor. If he let a family member so overtly exploit their position, selling access to the core of the organization for personal profit, that agreement would be violated. The monarchy would be seen as a mere facade. Ultimately, he articulated his tone subdued but resolute. He recognized the anguish, the public relations debacle, and the danger of permanently losing his kid. However, he asserted that some boundaries once transgressed necessitated a reaction. He contended that the institution's continuation was contingent upon its values. To concede those ideals now because of fear of repercussions would ensure their ultimate obsolescence and decline. The evidence was incontrovertible. The conduct was inexcusable. The resolution was reached. The conference concluded with a somber agreement. The monarch would take action. The untenable situation had culminated in a decisive and harsh decision. The letter that disconnected a son, King Charles opted to compose the letter himself. Positioned at his vintage desk at Clarence House, he grasped his preferred fountain pen, the tool with which he had endorsed several state documents, and started drafting the most challenging correspondence of his existence. This cannot be a detached formal communication. It was a letter from a father to his son, although conveying a king's ultimate decree. Numerous drafts were composed and rejected, leaving the floor around his desk strewn with crumpled pages of royal stationery. He aimed for a tone that might reconcile steadfast institutional determination with a father's profound and now sorrowful affection. The letter started with that affection. He expressed his pleasure in the man Harry had evolved into, reminiscing about treasured recollections from a youth prior to the imposition of duty and division that had overshadowed their lives. He reassured Harry that regardless of the circumstances, he would always remain his cherished son. Subsequently, with meticulous accuracy, he revealed the harsh reality. He elucidated the inquiry, the identification of the offshore account, and the payment patterns indicative of a methodical monetization of royal access. He refrained from using euphemisms. He articulated the facts accurately, arguing that the evidence was incontrovertible and the violation of procedure was too grave to be overlooked. He recognized the distress this information would inflict. He understood that Harry loved his wife and that they had established a life and family together. He was not asking Harry to denounce her, but rather to comprehend the ramifications of her acts. The letter subsequently articulated the conclusion with clarity and precision. To safeguard the integrity of the crown, Meghan's royal titles would be officially and publicly rescinded. He said that it was an act of institutional necessity rather than personal malice. Ultimately, he presented his kid with an option, a concluding diminishing opportunity for a future. Harry might stand beside his wife and acknowledge that this choice would establish a permanent and legal separation from the family. Alternatively, he might concede the reality of his actions and start the protracted, challenging endeavor of restoring confidence. The letter concluded as it started with an affirmation of affection and a vow that a father's door would always remain ajar despite the need for a king's to shut. The letter was sent by diplomatic courier with clear instructions for it to be delivered straight to Prince Harry. It reached his Montecito home on a sunny California afternoon. Upon identifying his father's unique handwriting on the substantial cream envelope, Harry had a tightening sensation of dread in his gut. He perused it solitarily in his workplace. His first perplexity turned into incredulity, followed by intense fury. He repeatedly read the paragraphs as if the words might alter. His father was not only accusing his wife of being a swindler, he was rendering judgment. With trembling palms, he dialed his father's private line. The call was sent to voicemail. He made another call. Voice message. Several hours later, Charles returned the call. The dialogue was succinct, harsh, and conclusive. Harry's voice, laden with rage and anguish, charged the family with a malicious racial conspiracy. Charles, his voice laden with grief, asserted calmly that the choice was grounded on recorded financial data rather than emotion. The conversation concluded with Harry uttering words that would resonate in the quiet between them for years to follow. He informed his father that he had now lost both of his boys. He then terminated the call, removing the last tenuous link to his previous existence. The global announcement. At 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning London time, the decision was made. The palace communications staff, having simulated every conceivable situation, issued the official statement. It was concurrently published on the royal website and sent to all major news organizations worldwide. The impact was immediate and dramatic. In newsrooms from London to Los Angeles, the announcement struck with explosive impact. Standard programming was disrupted. Breaking news alerts illuminated television displays. The world paused to comprehend the extraordinary news. The statement exemplified meticulous conciseness. A comprehensive financial examination verified the existence of severe issues over the behavior of the Duchess of Sussex during her tenure as a working royal. It indicated that these issues were due to financial arrangements that breached established norms. Consequently, His Majesty the King resolved to revoke all royal titles and styles. Effective immediately, she ceased to be Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. She was once again only Meghan Markle. The statement lacked significant specifics. The offshore account and the exact payments were not referenced. The palace's attorneys emphasized the need for justifying the conduct, while excluding any material that may support a slander claim. The last statement conveyed official remorse and reiterated the family's dedication to the highest standards of integrity. No other comments will be issued. The international response was a tumultuous display of discord. Social media ignited a virtual civil war. Hashtags supporting Meghan trended along with those endorsing the king. She was portrayed as a victim of a prejudiced institution, a contemporary woman penalized for her autonomy. She was denounced as a duplicitous swindler who had ultimately been unmasked. The narrative dominated all news cycles, surpassing conflicts and electoral events. In the United States, the narrative rapidly coalesced in Meghan's favor as experts and celebrities hastened to denounce the perceived harshness of an antiquated monarchy. In Britain and the Commonwealth, public sentiment was markedly and acutely divided. An unsettling hush persisted in California for 36 hours. Journalists stationed outside the gates of the Montecito home, their cameras focused on the quiet property. The world awaited the impending counteroffensive with bated breath. All individuals inside the palace were aware of its impending occurrence. They executed their strategy. They are now awaiting hers. The reply upon arrival was a public relations triumph. A statement was published on Meghan and Harry's Foundation website, a very personal and emotionally resonant communication that promptly recontextualized the whole tale. Meghan conveyed deep sorrow for the false allegations and refuted any misconduct. She said that the offshore account was a lawful mechanism for managing her pre-existing professional assets, an arrangement of which the palace had been aware from the first. Subsequently, the fatal strike was delivered. She said unequivocally that she saw the decision as driven by racism, a retribution for being a woman of color who had the audacity to confront the institution's inflexible traditions. She declared her intention to pursue legal action for slander. Harry featured in a brief confrontational film with his wife, alleging that his family used the same tactics against her that ultimately contributed to his mother's death. The counteroffensive was profoundly successful. The narrative shifted from financial misconduct to racial inequity. The palace was on the defensive, overwhelmed by a deluge of charges that they could neither openly contest nor deny. It seemed that Meghan had triumphed in the battle for public perception. However, the palace has made preparations for this eventuality. They had foreseen the allegations of racism and had one more pivotal card in reserve. 3 days subsequent to Meghan's testimony, an anonymous, extensively redacted dossier of papers was presented to one of the Globe's most respected investigative journalists. It included duplicates of bank statements from the offshore account. It included corporation registration documentation. Moreover, it included copies of email correspondences, emails authenticated by forensic specialists in which Meghan explicitly addressed certain payments from media entities in direct return for exclusive information on private royal family events and the dissemination of intimate family images. An email openly negotiated a pay of $25,000 for information on a special dinner at Windsor. The narrative was disseminated on a Sunday morning. The evidence was incontrovertible. The assertion did not originate from an unknown source. It was articulated by Meghan herself, addressing the stark consequences of violating her family's trust. The effect was instantaneous and disastrous for her credibility. The story changed abruptly. Advocates who had fervently championed her were faced with irrefutable evidence. The allegations of racism, while not completely muted, were overshadowed by the compelling nature of the collected evidence. The truth, meticulously crafted and deliberately presented, had surfaced. The palace preserved its official quiet, allowing the papers to convey their own message. It was a ruthless, conclusive action in a catastrophic struggle. The match concluded. The king safeguarded his crown while the household was in disarray. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.